Pripyat, April 26, 1:23 a.m. A group of engineers in Chernobyl carefully watches the power output as they conduct a long overdue safety test on the Unit 4 reactor. Then, suddenly, an explosion rocks the place. What happened and who is to blame? The questions arise immediately. As the first phone calls are frantically made, the largest, most expensive, and most ambitious nuclear cleanup in human history has officially begun. But, like any story, the Chernobyl disaster extends far beyond what the surface shows, and there are a plethora of videos, books, and documentaries that cover different aspects of this incident. However, I think I've discovered a truly remarkable book that explains not just the disaster itself, but everything contextual, historical, and political about the event. So please, let me introduce to you the incredible work of Adam Higginbotham, Midnight in Chernobyl. There are 5 main things that the book does which makes it remarkable. The first great point of the book was to start with the construction of the plant. For some reason, this was not touched on in the HBO documentary, and it provides a lot of important context to the disaster. Bryukhanov was the plant director of Chernobyl, but he wasn't even a nuclear engineer. The materials ordered were rarely available, and the ones that were delivered were so poor in quality that they had to be disassembled and reassembled on the site in the process known as pre-installation overhaul. Under these dire conditions, Bryukhanov did everything he could to try and keep the construction going. A striking point for me was when the plant director attempted to resign under the stress, but his letter was instead torn and rejected. Now trapped in a job he couldn't possibly complete, Bryukhanov resorted to cutting corners from the design and managed to bring the first reactors online in 1977. I had expected to feel anger at Bryukhanov, just like how I felt angered at the plant personnel who couldn't properly handle the disaster. However, I realized that Bryukhanov wasn't an incompetent man. I felt proud that he was able to accomplish the impossible under the conditions he was under. I felt pity for the man who was forced to labor on despite the impossible task. But I also felt alarmed and worried because of the construction faults that were displayed. The second great point was the way Dyatlov was described. In the HBO series, he was made to look like a controlling, arrogant, and incompetent villain.
Get it back up! How the fuck did you get this job?
Comrade Dyatlov.
You're gonna tell me that you did everything right again, you incompetent arsehole?
In reality, he was very knowledgeable about the reactor. He had read up about everything he could possibly read about the RBMK because he wanted his job done well. What was true was his controlling manner. During the explosion, he thought that he knew better and commanded the technical personnel to conduct potentially dangerous tasks. But what Dyatlov definitely was not was a villain. After realizing that he sent his trainees into danger, Dyatlov immediately ran out and tried to call them back. I don't know if it's my expectations for Dyatlov being too low, but that single action completely changed my view on the character. From an ice-cold, uncaring leader to a person with flesh and bone, who cares for others. The third great point was the description of the government's response. The book made it clear that the government is more interested in saving face than saving lives. Large chunks of the book is on political drama and how propaganda is laid out by the Soviet Union, and I believe that is completely justified because it reflects the dire state of truth in the Union. The phrase panic is used countless times in the book as an almost universal explanation for cover-ups and misinformation. Everything is used to prevent panic. To maintain control of the state, the government always has to suppress panic. In a way, the way the disaster is handled is much more horrifying than the actual disaster. The last great point of the book was the overall language. As one reader said, this book reads more like a thriller than a nonfiction book about a power plant. I have yet to read another nonfiction book that manages to cover such a technical and complicated topic with such engaging and emotion-packed language. All in all, I would highly recommend giving this book a read, as it's one of the best books on the subject. If you have any more suggestions on books I should review, make sure to pop them in the comment section below. Also, leave a like if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more content like this.